The year 1645 dawned with England deeply entrenched in a brutal civil war. King Charles III's royalist forces, the Cavaliers, had seen a mixed fortune in the preceding years of conflict. Parliament, however, had recently taken a decisive step to professionalize its military. This pivotal decision resulted in the creation of the new model army. It was an army forged not from local militias tied to specific regions, but a national force of trained, paid and disciplined soldiers. Sir Thomas Fairfax was appointed its Lord General, a capable and respected commander. His second in command of the horse was the formidable Oliver Cromwell, a man of iron will and fervent Puritan belief. In early June, the new model army was maneuvering to lift the royalist siege of Taunton. The king, meanwhile, had recently stormed and brutally sacked the parliamentarian town of Leicester. This act, while a tactical victory, spread shock and outrage, galvanizing Parliament's resolve. Fairfax was given new orders: abandon the Taunton campaign and seek out the king's main army for a decisive battle. The king's advisors were divided on the best course of action. Some urged to march north to link up with forces in Scotland, while others, like the dashing Prince Rupert, advocated for confronting Fairfax directly. Rupert's aggressive counsel won out, a decision that would seal the royalist fate. The royalist army, confident after their success at Leicester, turned to face the approaching parliamentarians. On the evening of June 13th, parliamentarian patrols made contact with royalist outposts near the village of Naseby. The die was cast. A major battle was now inevitable. Chosen battlefield was a broad ridge of farmland near Naseby in Northamptonshire. Fairfax and his commanders chose their ground carefully, positioning their army on a slight ridge known as Mill Hill. The new model army numbered around 14,000 men, a significant numerical advantage over the royalists. The royalist force, commanded by the king and Prince Rupert, consisted of roughly 9,000 soldiers. Despite being outnumbered, the royalist infantry and cavalry were seasoned veterans, confident in their abilities. The morning of June 14th, 1645 was misty and damp. The parliamentarian army was arrayed in a conventional formation for the era. The infantry, under Major General Philip Skippon, formed the center. These foot soldiers were organized into regiments, with blocks of pikemen to repel cavalry and musketeers to provide firepower. On the right flank, Oliver Cromwell commanded the cavalry of the Eastern Association, his famous Ironsides. The left flank of the parliamentarian horse was commanded by Henry Ireton, a competent but less experienced officer. Fairfax also cleverly placed a reserve of dragoons, mounted infantry, hidden behind a hedge on the far left. The royalists deployed on a parallel ridge called Dust Hill. King Charles commanded the army in person, a symbolic and morale-boosting presence. The royalist infantry, led by Lord Astley, formed the center, a corps of tough, experienced fighters. On the royalist right flank, poised to strike Ireton, was the fiery Prince Rupert with his elite cavalry. The royalist left wing of horse, primarily from the northern counties, was led by Sir Marmaduke Langdale. The battle began around 10 in the morning with a general royalist advance. The royalist foot soldiers marched steadily up the slope toward Skippon's infantry. Simultaneously, the cavalry on both wings spurred their horses into a charge. On the royalist right, Prince Rupert's charge was a textbook example of shock cavalry action. They smashed into Ireton's less experienced troopers with devastating force. Ireton himself was wounded, unhorsed and briefly taken prisoner. His flank dissolved, with many of his men fleeing in panic from the field. However, Rupert displayed his characteristic lack of discipline. Instead of rallying and turning on the exposed parliamentarian infantry, his men galloped on in pursuit of the fugitives. They charged all the way to the parliamentarian baggage train, where their attack was eventually repulsed by the guards. This impetuous pursuit effectively removed the royalist right wing from the decisive part of the battle. On the opposite flank, the situation was entirely different. Cromwell's Ironsides met Langdale's Northern Horse in a fierce and evenly matched struggle. The combat was furious, with neither side giving ground easily. Cromwell's superior discipline and the steadfastness of his troopers began to tell. Slowly, methodically, the Ironsides gained the upper hand over Langdale's men. After a hard fight, the royalist left wing broke and was driven from the field. Here, Cromwell demonstrated his supreme quality as a commander. Did not allow his men to chase their defeated opponents off the battlefield. He quickly reformed a significant portion of his cavalry and held them in reserve. This act of battlefield control would prove to be the turning point of the entire engagement. While the cavalry actions unfolded, a desperate struggle was taking place in the center. The veteran royalist infantry had crashed into the new model army's foot with tremendous elan. Despite their numerical inferiority, the king's infantry fought with incredible ferocity. The parliamentarian center began to buckle under the intense pressure. Major General Skippon was severely wounded while trying to rally his men. For a moment, it seemed as if the royalist foot might achieve the impossible and break the parliamentarian line. The royalist infantry was tough, experienced, and fighting with the courage of desperation. Fairfax himself rode into the heart of the fighting, removing his helmet so his men could recognize him. His personal bravery helped to steady the wavering parliamentarian soldiers. The royalist infantry, however, was now isolated and vulnerable. Their own cavalry on the left had been defeated, and their cavalry on the right was absent. This was the moment Cromwell had been waiting for. He unleashed his reformed cavalry reserve in a devastating charge against the flank and rear of the royalist infantry. Simultaneously, the hidden parliamentarian dragoons opened fire on the other flank. Attacked from three sides, the royalist infantry's position became hopeless. Their heroic advance turned into a desperate struggle for survival. King Charles, observing the disaster from his reserve position, prepared to lead a final, desperate charge. He was with his elite lifeguard, a formidable body of horsemen. However, a Scottish courtier, the Earl of Carnwath, grabbed the bridle of the king's horse, turned the king away from the battle, shouting, "Will you go upon your death?" This action, whether wise or cowardly, broke the royalist will to continue the fight. The king and his entourage fled the field, and with them went the last hope of victory. By this time, Prince Rupert's cavalry had finally regrouped and returned to the battlefield. But they returned only to witness the complete destruction of their army. The battle was over. The victory for Parliament was absolute. Some royalist infantry regiments, like Prince Rupert's Bluecoats, refused to surrender. They fought to the last man, a testament to their incredible bravery. Most, however, seeing the hopelessness of their situation, threw down their weapons and surrendered. The parliamentarian cavalry pursued the fleeing royalists for many miles. The pursuit was ruthless, turning the defeat into a catastrophic rout. Royalists lost their most experienced officers, veteran soldiers, and all of their artillery. Crucially, Parliament soldiers also captured the king's personal baggage. Inside, they found his private correspondence, a political treasure trove. These letters revealed Charles's attempts to seek aid from Catholic powers in Europe and Ireland. Parliament quickly published these letters in a pamphlet titled "The King's Cabinet Opened." The revelations destroyed the king's credibility and swung public opinion decisively against him. The Battle of Naseby was the death blow to the royalist cause. Never again would King Charles be able to field a full army of such quality. The First English Civil War would drag on for another year, but its outcome was no longer in doubt. The victory at Naseby validated the concept of the new model army. It demonstrated that a disciplined, professional force could defeat a brave but poorly led one. The battle cemented Oliver Cromwell's reputation as Parliament's greatest military commander. His control and tactical deployment of the cavalry were the keys to victory. Naseby was more than a military victory. It was a political and psychological turning point. It shattered the aura of the dashing cavalier and the invincibility of the royalist cause. The fields of Naseby, once quiet farmland, had hosted the decisive moment of a nation's struggle. The cost was high, with thousands killed or wounded on that single day. The captured Welsh camp followers, mistaken for Irish Catholics, were treated with particular brutality. Many of the women were maimed or killed by the victorious parliamentarian soldiers. This dark episode serves as a reminder of the war's intense bitterness. The fate of the captured royalist soldiers was varied. Many were imprisoned, while others were conscripted into the new model army. The victory at Naseby set England on a new path. It ensured that the power of the king would be permanently limited by Parliament. The battle was a crucial step towards the eventual trial and execution of Charles I. The new model army, forged in war and victorious at Naseby, would go on to dominate English politics for the next decade. Fairfax's leadership, though often overshadowed by Cromwell's, was essential for holding the army together. Prince Rupert's fatal flaw, a rush of blood to the head, was a microcosm of the royalist command issues. The discipline of the Ironsides was a reflection of Cromwell's own iron self-control. The battle began with a royalist advance, full of confidence and pride. The initial clash of infantry was a brutal, grinding affair. Musketeers from both sides exchanged volley after volley, filling the air with smoke. The sound of the battle would have been deafening. Drums, shouts, and the roar of musketry. Ireton's flank collapsed under the sheer weight of Rupert's charge. The flight of these troopers could have panicked the entire army. But the center, though battered, held on just long enough. Cromwell's countercharge was not a wild rush, but a controlled maneuver. He sent a portion of his force to deal with Langdale's remnants. The rest he turned, with devastating effect, upon the royalist infantry. The royalist foot soldiers were warriors, but they were still only men. To be attacked from the front and both flanks was an impossible situation. Their formations, their only defense, disintegrated into chaos. The king's flight demoralized his remaining forces completely. The battle lasted only about 3 hours. But in those 3 hours, the fate of a kingdom was decided. The road from Naseby became a scene of slaughter. The new model army had proven its worth beyond all doubt. It was a victory of discipline over dash, of strategy over raw courage. The political consequences were as significant as the military ones. Charles's secret dealings shocked even some of his own moderate supporters. The battle effectively marked the beginning of the end for royalist hopes. The king would become a fugitive, hunted across his own kingdom. The power of the army grew immensely after Naseby. Battle is remembered as one of the most important in English history. It was a day of reckoning for a king who believed in his divine right to rule. And it was a day of triumph for a new kind of army, and a new kind of man. The echoes of the cannons at Naseby would reverberate through the corridors of power for generations. The royalist infantry fought with a courage worthy of a better cause. Skepin's resilience in the face of a grievous wound inspired his men to hold the line. The hidden dragoons under Colonel Oakey provided a nasty surprise for the Royalist foot. Langdale's northern horsemen were brave, but ultimately outmatched by the Ironsides. The failure to control Rupert's cavalry was a recurring problem for the Royalist command. The capture of the Royalist artillery train crippled any chance of future large-scale battles. The battlefield itself was a wide, open space, ideal for a decisive encounter. The final moments for the Royalist infantry were a scene of utter carnage and despair. Victory gave Parliament an unshakable confidence in its army and its cause.